This is Asrar Rashid from Birmingham. If Abdullah Hashim is truthful in his claims, he will come out and debate and face me in public to a verbal debate, an intellectual debate, and demonstrate all his points. Pass this message on to Abdullah Hashim regarding the veracity and truthfulness of whom he referred to as Abu Sadiq. If he is indeed Abu Sadiq and not Abu al-Kadhib, then he will accept the challenge to the debate.
Why would we listen to him? Look at him. I mean, who is he? On what authority does he speak? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الإمام المهديين وسلم تسليما السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Alaikum salam wa barakatuh, Father.
Inshallah, you're doing well, Mamadou.
I'm doing well, Father. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah. So you guys have approached me and you guys were very insistent on me responding to this Sheikh. His name is Sheikh Asrar. He's from Birmingham. He leads a local masjid, I guess, congregation where he gives some Friday speeches and things of the sort. He wrote this book about the end times and basically he's mentioned me in it. In the category, I guess, of like false prophets and movements and things like this. And he's basically been talking about me a little bit. I think in one of the YouTube video lectures of his, you guys have pointed out that he's said a few things and kind of like emphasized on, that I lead people astray through Shia Islam and Shia Islam is bad or something of the sort. So this guy, according to what's written online about him, what you guys have pointed out to me, I guess he drank poison in a debate with a Christian before, something of the sort. They call him the lion of the Ahl Sunnah. And, and basically he's, he doesn't like me for some reason. I'm not sure why or what it is that I did to him, but nonetheless, let's respond to him. This is a perfect example, I think, of Muslim scholars whom, on the one hand, they sit on the platform of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they speak in his religion and they can speak concerning his religion, right? And they write books and they give glad tidings and try to teach the people that there is this character that's going to come one day. His name is Imam al-Mahdi. But then whenever there's a call that comes out that calls the people towards Imam al-Mahdi, they rush to, make judgments really fast without kind of like trying to or attempting to verify the nature of the claim or to even understand it. And they make horrible mistakes in terms of and he's made horrible mistakes in terms of what he's written in his book, especially concerning me and my history. A lot of it's false information, fake news. So basically, today we're going to respond to Sheikh Asrar. I'm going to introduce myself and tell him a little bit about my history and my beliefs so that he can understand, as well as his followers or whoever else that is watching. This guy, he's a Sunni. He's from Ahl Sunnah. I am also half Egyptian and I come from a Sunni background, meaning like my father's side of the family, my physical father's side of the family are Sunnis, and I came up very familiar with that upbringing and that narrative that basically Islam is 5 pillars and the companions loved Rasulullah, peace be upon him and his family, and they gave victory to him, and he passed away, and they basically focus on the story of Islam and the life of the Prophet, and they say that afterwards his 4 best friends became the rightly guided caliphs, starting with Abu Bakr and then Umar and then Uthman and then Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. The thing about it is that as time went on and I grew older, and I began to research and read into my religion, because I was born like any other human being. I had no idea that I would be making the claims that I'm making today. I was just a person who was sincerely looking for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My mother, her family, they're all Christian. And so I grew up kind of with both of these backgrounds. I was Muslim, and I don't know if I would call myself a Sunni Muslim, because I just considered myself to be a Muslim who was following the religion of Islam. As time went on, I began to read into my religion, and I found out some very horrible things which we never heard in any of the masjids from the sheikhs, like these guys who go on the platform and they preach to the people. They never talk about this stuff. And what I never heard from these sheikhs were the fact that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after he passes away, what happens is that his daughter, Fatima al-Zahra, she becomes very angry with Abu Bakr because they take away from her land that the Prophet had left for her, Fadak. And there's also these incidents that took place where they basically raided the house of Fatima, and they caused her to have a miscarriage. We do know from Sunni even sources that the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she was so dear to the Prophet because she was his only child, and the Prophet said that Fatima is a part of me. Whoever makes her angry has angered me, and whoever angers me has angered Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and whoever angers Allah, the curse of Allah is upon him, right?
Exactly.
And we know that Fatima was very angry with Abu Bakr. She didn't talk to him. She refused to talk to him until she died, and she died 6 months after the passing of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We do know that the companions after the Prophet, they fought amongst one another. A series of very vicious and nasty wars began to take place after the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where all of these great companions that were with the Prophet during his life began to turn on one another and struggle and fight over power, right? And it kind of culminated in one of the worst battles, and that was the Battle of the Camel, where basically you have on one side Ali ibn Abi Talib, who alayhi salam, who is the cousin of the Prophet, the first one who accepts Islam. He's the guy who the Prophet chooses, right, to marry his own daughter, and says that nobody is good enough for Ali except for Fatima, and nobody's good enough for Fatima except for Ali. And the lineage of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it continues through the children and the offspring of Ali ibn Abi Talib and Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. And so on one hand you have Ali ibn Abi Talib, and he's leading an army, and on the other hand you have the wife of the Prophet Muhammad. You have Aisha going out on a camel, and she is leading another huge army with half of the companions with her. And Aisha was the daughter of who? Of Abu Bakr, right? So you have like the family of the Prophet is feuding amongst one another. His wife is leading an army against his cousin, right?
Yes.
And his grandkids. So that's a real shocking thing that they don't tell you. And thousands upon thousands of Muslims, companions that these people considered to be holy, were slaughtered and massacred and died, you know? So the thing about it is that you can't have two people that are upon truth, right? If you have people that are killing each other, somebody's got to be upon truth and somebody's got to be upon falsehood, right?
That's correct.
Well, the Prophet Muhammad said that Ali is with the truth and the truth is with Ali ibn Abi Talib, right? And I began to look deeper into this schism, these fights. Why is it that the Muslims were fighting one another? And I came to a very fascinating truth. It was shocking. It was very disturbing to me. And the fact is that before Islam, right, or during the beginning of Islam, the Prophet, when he first announced that he was a prophet, there were people that were fighting against him. Okay. And those people, which was mainly the house of Abu Sufyan. Yes. Remember there was Abu Sufyan, and there was who? There was the the wife of Abu Sufyan, the enemy of Islam, as they call him, Hind.
Yes.
And Abu Sufyan and Hind, they caused a lot of trouble for the Prophet. They really led several armies and battles against the Prophet. They fought him in the Battle of Badr. They fought him in the Battle of Uhud. They killed Hamza. Hind was the liver eater, or whatever they call her, and she basically got Wahshi to murder Hamza, and then she was eating his internal organs. Like an animal in the middle of the field. She caused so much pain for the Prophet Muhammad. So you have this family over here that are literally eating the guts and the insides, right? And the raw flesh, the raw organs of the family of the Prophet Muhammad, his beloved uncle Hamza, who is one of the greatest martyrs in all of Islam. She's eating his organs. And this same family that had fought the Prophet and killed so many Muslims and caused so much pain for the Prophet Muhammad, this same family, after the Prophet's death, right? So the Prophet, he finally succeeds in defeating the Meccans, and he enters into Mecca, and then they proclaim themselves to be Muslims. And then after the Prophet's death, it is the descendants, the house of Abu Sufyan, Muawiyah, right, and Yazid, who continue to fight the household of the Prophet. What happens is that basically, Muawiyah, the son of Abu Sufyan, after the Prophet's passing, he begins to proclaim himself as a leader, and he leads basically forces to fight the cousin of the Prophet Muhammad and the husband of his daughter in a war.
Yes.
Which results in the very end with the assassination of the fourth of the rightly guided caliphs, right? Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, who for Shia Muslims is the first of the 12 Imams. Muawiyah basically causes that a renegade named Abdurrahman ibn Muljam strikes him upon his head and kills him while he's in a state of prostration to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then I found out that the war continued. Muawiyah, he wanted to declare himself the prince of all of the believers, right? After having committed such an atrocious act, and he felt like the house of Abu Sufyan had more of a right to rule over the Muslims than the house of the Prophet Muhammad. And so Muawiyah, after having Ali ibn Abi Talib murdered, basically managed to push aside Al-Hassan, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, and prevent him from obtaining power. And basically what he did is he ruled instead and proclaimed himself as the king and the ruler over all of the Muslims and the guardian of Islam. So in this Sunni religion that he's upon, I mean, basically the enemies of Islam, it's all reversed. It's like the opposite. The enemies of Islam are the guardians of Islam and the household of the Prophet, and his most beloved, people in the whole world are the enemies of Islam, I guess now, and they're causing chaos. The son now of Muawiyah, right? He has also ambitions for being the successor of Muawiyah. So Muawiyah wants to place his son Yazid in power. And so what Muawiyah does is he basically pays the wife of Al-Hassan to poison him. And once he is killed and murdered and he passes away, basically Yazid, son of Muawiyah, begins to prepare himself for the ascension to the throne, and Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is murdered by Yazid, son of Muawiyah, in the famous battle of Karbala, where he is decapitated, him and his household and his family and his companions. And his head is placed on a spear, and it's marched through town, marched in front of all of the Muslims through the lands of the Muslims, yeah?
Yes.
His family members are imprisoned, and the household of the Prophet are pushed aside from power. In order for what? In order that the house of Abu Sufyan rule. It's crazy.
It's ridiculous, really.
It is crazy. So now the house of Abu Sufyan has on them the blood of Hamza, the blood of all of the first martyrs of Islam in the first two battles. They have on them the blood of, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. They have on them the blood of Al-Hassan and the blood of Al-Hussein. They were responsible for killing all these people. And Al-Hassan and Al-Hussein, according to the narrations in Islam, according to what the Prophet said, these two are the masters of the youth of all of paradise.
Yeah.
The Prophet Muhammad said that anybody who goes into paradise, these two are their masters, right? So we know that Al-Hassan and Al-Hussein are going into paradise. So I just don't understand how can Imam Al-Hassan and Al-Hussein go to paradise and their killers also go to paradise too. It doesn't make sense, right? Mm-hmm. The murderers of the grandchildren of the Prophet Muhammad are certainly not going to be in paradise alongside with the family of the Prophet Muhammad, right?
Absolutely not. It's absolutely ridiculous. The murders of the family of Muhammad, and the Prophet Muhammad said that, hold on tight to weighty things, the book of Allah and my family. And here the Muslims are praising the murderers of his own family. It's nonsense.
Exactly. So these events that I discovered and read about in Islamic history, and everybody can verify for themselves, led me to kind of want to not just limit myself to reading the historical narrative from the side of the companions of the Prophet, right, or the alleged companions of the Prophet, or the history writers, right. I didn't want to read, from them anymore. I wanted to hear the other side. I wanted to hear what the family of Imam al-Hussein had to say about their father, their grandfather, their brother, being decapitated, and his entire, the family of the Prophet being massacred. And that's what opened me up to Shia Islam, because Shia Islam is what? They're Muslims. They believe in the prophethood of the Prophet Muhammad, just like Sunnis do, except that they don't take their religion from the companions of the Prophet. They take their religion from what the family of the Prophet said, right? And they believe that God had appointed these 12 leaders, these 12 imams that were supposed to be the successors to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So just like the Sunnis believe that there's these rightful successors to the Prophet Muhammad, which is Abu Bakr, his father-in-law, Umar ibn Khattab, his other father-in-law, and then Uthman ibn Affan, and then Ali ibn Abi Talib, and then it goes now to the house of Abu Sufyan and the Bani Umayyah. The Shia, they believe that no, the Prophet had specifically mentioned who it was that was supposed to succeed him, and they say that he made that very clear in front of everybody, even in Sunni narrations, and even the companions of the Prophet, they testified to this, and that was the event of Ghadir Khum, where the Prophet held up the hand of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, and he said, whoever I'm the master of, Ali is his master. Oh Allah, be a guardian to those who take Ali as a guardian, and be an enemy to those who take Ali as an enemy. And so the event of Ghadir kind of sealed the deal, and it should seal the deal for any Muslim, really. It's sufficient and clear because the narrations are all over the place, and it's very clear that the Prophet Muhammad gathered 70,000 of his companions in order that he may declare who his successor will be. I mean, the Sunnis, they think that Umar ibn Khattab and Abu Bakr and these guys were really smart because they believe that before their death, they had so much fear over the future of the Ummah that they appointed a successor. Mm-hmm. They believe that Abu Bakr appointed Umar, so that we may safeguard the affairs, because any righteous king or president or prime minister, right, would not pass away without leaving a mechanism or appointing an heir for him when he passes away. I mean, even in America right now, they have a mechanism where if the president dies, it's known, it's ingrained in the law that the vice president comes to power, right? So people know, what's going on, and there's not like conflict over power after death. So the Prophet, he was much wiser than Abu Bakr. He was much wiser than Omar, who set this voting mechanism between some companions, a handful of companions of the Prophet. And the Prophet himself knows, he doesn't speak except with that which God reveals to him. And so every word that comes out of his mouth is wisdom, and every word that comes out of his mouth is revelation. And so the Prophet, he appointed at Ghadir Ali ibn Abi Talib to be his successor. And the narrations are very clear that the people went up and they pledged allegiance to Ali ibn Abi Talib and they congratulated him.
Yes.
And the Prophet also, there's this interesting event that took place, and that was, even after that public appointment on the, basically on the Thursday before his passing, what happened is that he was feeling very ill, and he was on his bed, and a group of companions and household members from his family members were around him, and he said to them, "Please give me a paper and pen. I will write for you something which, if you hold on to it, you will never go astray." And some people tried to go get the paper and pen for the Prophet because that's what he requested, but unfortunately, there's this very loud voice out of the crowd that prevented that and said, "No, don't get him the paper and pen. He's hallucinating. He's not well. We don't need to hear what the Prophet has to say. It's enough for us to have the Quran." And it turned out that this guy was actually Umar ibn Khattab, and that's very unfortunate because it's very clear now what was happening. What was happening is that he wanted to make a coup d'etat. There was a conspiracy around the Prophet to, steal power away from the rightful heir and successor of the Prophet, Ali ibn Abi Talib. So they were trying to prevent it because this doesn't even make sense. Yeah. Why would a fallible human being who's supposed to just be a follower of the Prophet not want to hear and see that which, if the Prophet wrote down, right, his final testament, his final will, that's what he wanted to write, and he's the Prophet. How rude can we be to prevent the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam from writing that which he wanted to write? And then on top of that, the Prophet said that if we hold on to it, we'll never go astray. That's an incredible promise for all mankind and for the entire Muslim nation, that all we have to do is just abide by these final words of the Prophet and we're going to be good. So, and the narrations state that they prevented them from writing it, and even Ibn Abbas and others cried over it. They called it the tragedy of Thursday. That it was a tragedy. It was a musibah that the Prophet wanted to write something, and the people treated him like this in his final days. Right. So then, what happened is that on the night of his passing, the Prophet Muhammad, because remember, this was the Thursday before his passing. On the night of his passing, what happens is that the Prophet gathers his most beloved, trustworthy companions, and there was there Miqdad, Abu Dhar, Salman, and you had also there Ali ibn Abi Talib, and the Prophet Muhammad actually dictates to Ali ibn Abi Talib, and has Ali ibn Abi Talib write down that which he wanted to write. He dictates to him his final will. And this will, we find it preserved in the books of the Muslims, right? It's in the books of the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And we find out what it was that the Prophet wanted to write down. He wanted to write down that after me, there will be 12 Imams, and after them, there'll be 12 Mahdis. And he begins to list off the names of his successors, from his death all the way until this day and age that we're in right now. And so he names Ali ibn Abi Talib as his first, and then he names Imam al-Hassan as his second successor. He names Imam al-Hussein as the successor of his brother, Imam al-Hassan. And then he names that people should follow and take as their Imam and leader after Imam al-Hussein, Ali Zayn al-Abidin. And then after him, Muhammad al-Baqir. And then after him, Ja'far al-Sadiq. And then after him, Musa Kazim. And then after him, Ali al-Rida. And then after him, Muhammad al-Jawad. And then after him, Ali al-Hadi. And then after him, Al-Hasan al-Askari. And then it says, and then after him will be Muhammad al-Mahdi, right? The 12th Imam. And then the will of the Prophet says that after the 12th Imam, there's going to be 12 Mahdis, and then it proceeds to dictate the names of the first 3 Mahdis that would follow Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, and he mentions them as Abdullah, Ahmad, and the third name is al-Mahdi. Now, of course, finding out all of this information, that was previously concealed to me by the non-working scholars, it raised a lot of questions, Mamadou. I wondered to myself, why are the scholars doing this? Why did they not share this information, And every time I would bring up this conversation with somebody, they would say, oh, but the scholars, we got to ask the scholars. Scholars are amazing. We don't know anything. The scholars know best. And they're always trying to push us into shut the argument and refer us to the scholars. Nobody wants to talk about the blood of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that was spilled all over the place. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that it's the Islam. It starts with the Prophet Muhammad and it ends with the Prophet Muhammad's grandson, but in the middle of the history of Islam, you have in there ruling the enemies of Islam, or the fathers-in-law of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It doesn't make sense, right? Something is wrong that you have the former enemies of Islam are ruling and the family of the Prophet is dying. If it was the enemies of Islam are ruling, but the family of the Prophet's not dying, then we could say, okay, maybe that's what they wanted. But I think that the decapitation of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was kind of the nail in the coffin, and it made everybody realize that no, something really wrong is going on, because not only was he murdered, but his entire household, including Imam al-Hussein's 6-month-old son, right? Abdullah the infant. So who would do such a thing? Who's going to kill babies? And well, it's not a surprise that the same person who's killing the baby of Imam al-Hussein and killing the grandson of the Prophet is a descendant of the woman who was eating the liver of the uncle of the Prophet. They're liver eaters, they're baby killers, they're ISIS-styled fighters that are cutting people's heads off and putting it on, on poles and walking them around in the lands of the Muslims. And these guys here,
yes,
when you go and you look into what most of these Sunnis say, they say, oh, we can't judge. Or some of them go as far as saying that, Muawiyah and Yazid, peace be upon them, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with them, radiallahu anhum, and they consider them to be great companions of Islam, So how can you trust people like that? You can't. Something's wrong. But, at the same time, we don't want to judge, rush to judgments, and accuse somebody, because Muslims are always like, oh, don't slander, if you don't backbite, don't slander. If you talk bad about a Muslim, it's really bad, So we had to go back and see what the household of the Prophet had to say. And we went back to those narrations, the narrations of Shia Islam. They follow the household of the Prophet. The Sunni Islam, they follow the household of Abu Sufyan and these other companions of the Prophet. That's who they take their religion from. And they think that we should obey these people. We have to obey the rulers over the Muslims, and and so each ruler of Islam that comes afterwards, they acknowledge the rule of these other Muslims like Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman that led to people like Muawiyah and Yazid coming into power. And the Shia, they say no, it's not. These were all illegitimate usurpers of the caliphate and of the power, and they had ulterior motives, and they were actually hypocrites that were not even Muslim.
Yeah, and it never ceases to surprise me how much these Sunni scholars defend really Abu Bakr and Umar, the ones who really, the killers of the Prophet and his family.
Yeah, it's disgusting. It really is, you know. And yeah, so I look into their narrations, the narrations of Shia Islam, the narrations of the household of the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And what do I find in there? I find that there are many hadiths that are in there that are talking about the scholars of the end times. And the hadiths from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that was preserved by his household, the Prophet is in there and he's warning us and he's saying to us that he is fearful in one narration over our nation, you know, from a giant fitna that is worse than the fitna of the Dajjal, you know. And when we look to see what is this fitna that is worse than the fitna of the Dajjal, it says that it's the fitna of the non-working scholars, right? These illegitimate scholars that speak in the name of Islam, but they really have no knowledge and they have no authority to speak. They are basically the continuation, the descendants of the successors of those scholars of the Bani Umayyah that jumped on the pulpit of the Prophet after his passing. And the Prophet had a bad dream about that one night where he saw, he woke up basically like sweating and very disturbed, and he saw a dream where he saw these apes that were jumping, these monkeys that were jumping around on his pulpit, pretending basically to be him, taking over his minbar, talking to the Muslims, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to him the meaning of this dream according to the narrations, and the meaning of the dream was that basically the cursed tree in the Quran, the Bani Umayyah, that they were going to usurp his position afterwards. And so the Prophet, in the narration speaking about the scholars, he says that the scholars of the end times are actually the worst creatures underneath the sky. And that this nation would have drunk the love of those two idols, meaning Abu Bakr and Umar. In the end time, their fitna will be greater than in the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. They would be more attached to them then. The narrations of the Prophet state that from the scholars of the end time comes out the fitna, and to them it returns. The narrations state that the very enemies of Imam al-Mahdi, when he appears, are the scholars. They're the ones who issue fatwas against him. And you just find narrations after narrations after narrations after narrations after narrations warning the followers of the family of Muhammad, right, the true believers, to stay away and not listen to any of the scholars of misguidance, because they are going to lead you astray in the same way as the rabbis and the priests led astray the Christians and the Jews from the true path of monotheism and the true religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In that same fashion, these scholars of Islam would do. And the Prophet cursed them, and he called them traitors, and he called them people that are basically agents of tyrants. And he said that anytime you see the scholar who is at the door of the king, then accuse that scholar. If you find a scholar who's working underneath a king or a tyrant and taking his directives and his orders from that king or that false government, then accuse that scholar, because that scholar is lying, and also accuse the ruler. But anytime you see a ruler who's taking advice, and he's under or taking advice from the scholar, then say yes to the scholar and yes to the ruler, because that's a good ruler. So we know that these guys are false scholars. They're calling us to falsehood. They're calling us to the enemies of Islam. And it was terrifying when it came out. It was a very terrifying reality, and so I decided that I'm not going to have anything to do with these Sunnis anymore. I don't believe in that. I declare myself innocent from the killers of the family of Muhammad alayhi salam. I don't ascribe to any of that, and I'm only going to be a follower and a lover of the family of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and a lover of anybody else who loves them. And so that was the beginning of the journey, where I became a, I guess you could call me a Shia Muslim, in the sense that I was a follower, because the word Shia means follower. I was a follower of Imam Ali alayhi salam and the 12 Imams. I took their narrations. But then, something happened, Mamadou. Yes. I was waiting for the emergence of Imam al-Mahdi. And I was looking into the signs according to the Ahl Bayt alayhi salam, the family of the Prophet, about what I should expect when Imam al-Mahdi emerges. Why was I doing that? It's very simple. Because the Shia are told that the first 11 successors of the Prophet Muhammad, they passed away. They were killed, right? And the Imam of the time is the 12th Imam. And the narrations tell us that we have to be on guard, and we have to prepare ourselves for the rise and appearance of the 12th Imam, who was hidden or in a state of occultation, because the Sunnis were basically trying to kill him from a very young age, because they also knew that there was this character that was going to emerge called the Mahdi. And so they wanted to kill him and murder him. And what happened is that, as I was looking into the narrations, I found that the narration stated that there was these signs that were changeable, that could or could not happen, and there's signs that are inevitable. And one of the signs that were very close to the rise of the Mahdi, or the appearance of the Mahdi, and also, is from one of those inevitable signs, was this character called the Yamani. Yes. Yeah. And the narrations stated that the Imams from the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam said that the banner of the Yamani is the banner of guidance. Yes. And that anybody who turns away from him is from the people of hellfire, right? So this banner, this da'wah that he's calling towards, is one that we have to obey. We have to, be on the side of the Yamani, because if we're not, then we're going to be from the people of hellfire. This is what the Ahlul Bayt said, and either we believe or we don't believe. Yes. We don't just pick and cherry pick and choose what it is that we want to believe in. Either we're going to believe all the narrations, or we're going to believe none of the narrations, right? Yes. And this is a narration that are in the books of the Shia, and they claim is authentic. So I'm looking for this character of the Yamani. Now my attention is shifting from the Mahdi to the Yamani. Why? Because the Yamani comes before the Mahdi, right? So if somebody's coming before the Mahdi, and the Ahl Bayt said that I have to follow him, or I'm from the people of hellfire, well, then I need to focus on the Yamani. And the Yamani, the narrations state, it says that he has a banner of guidance. Okay, so we're going to go to hellfire if we go against him, because his banner is a banner of guidance. Why? Because he calls towards our companion. He leads us towards Imam al-Mahdi. Well, it's clear then. Yeah. That's how Imam al-Mahdi has an army. That's how Imam al-Mahdi has, companions to be with, right? Is because there's this guy that comes out before Imam al-Mahdi, who's called the Yamani, and the Yamani means like the right hand, right? Or the right side. So he is the right hand of the Mahdi, and he's the one who's gathering his companions, and he's the one who's kind of like paving the way for Imam al-Mahdi. And lo and behold, we find narrations that state that before the Mahdi, there's the Yamani. And so as I'm looking for this character of the Yamani, what do I find? I find that there is a man who has appeared in Iraq, and his name is Ahmad al-Hassan, and he's claiming that he is the Yamani that is mentioned in the narrations. Okay? And he also has a banner. And in that banner, it was written in it, Al-Bay'a lillah, allegiances to Allah. I went and looked, what is this allegiances to Allah? And I found that the narrations of the Ahl Bayt said that in the banner, on the banner of the Mahdi is going to be written on it, Al-Bay'a lillah, allegiances to Allah. So what is the point of these narrations if anybody could raise a banner that says on it Al-Bay'a lillah, right? And also, what does Al-Bay'a lillah mean? It means that allegiance is to Allah. That means what? It means that all of the other banners that are on the face of the planet right now, they're all calling towards something or someone that's other than Allah, because this is the banner that's calling towards Allah. So the other banners are banners of misguidance, and this banner is a banner of truth, right? And the narration stated that the banner of the Mahdi is going to be written in the allegiances to Allah.
I mean, it's
very clear.
So clear.
It's very clear, but still, you got to be super sure. And so we looked into what else Ahmed al-Hassan was saying. Ahmed al-Hassan said, and you remember that will that the Prophet wrote on his deathbed, that the people told him, be quiet, we don't need it, the Quran's enough for us, it's all good, we don't need anything that you have to say now, Prophet Muhammad, you're hallucinating. He said that narration, the will, it says in the end of it that the successors of Imam al-Mahdi, those 12 Mahdis, who the first three names are Abdullah, Ahmad, and Al-Mahdi, he says, I'm Ahmad who's in the will.
Yes.
So now he comes to us with a letter of appointment. He comes to us with a banner that says in it, allegiances to Allah. He's confirming the narrations, right? We're looking into other narrations, and the narrations say that the companion of the matter is going to use as a proof the apparent will.
Yes.
Well, an apparent will is a will that's available and present for everybody to see, right? That's why it's called apparent, al-wasiyya al-dhahira. It's apparent. It's in the books of the Muslims.
Yes.
This is what the narrations say. The Ahl Bayt said that the companion of the matter would use as a proof that he would proclaim the apparent will. And here's Ahmed al-Hassan proclaiming himself to be Ahmad in the apparent will. Other narrations said that nobody proclaims this matter except for its truthful owner, or else Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cuts off their life. And Ahmed al-Hassan, he proclaimed it, and he was its truthful owner, and he's alive. He still is alive till this very day, and he proclaimed that matter in 1999, all right? And so Ahmed al-Hassan, I listened to his speeches, I read his books, I saw what it is that he was calling towards, and he was basically saying that, guys, the Muslim Ummah went astray. How did it go astray? It went astray when it disregarded the will of the Prophet Muhammad, and people started following the house of Abu Sufyan and these murderers, the liver eater family, the baby killer family. When we started following these people, we went astray, and we abandoned the family of Muhammad, whom their names were mentioned in this will, that God and Muhammad gave a promise that whoever holds on to them will never go astray, right? And he said that everybody on the earth is not allowed to choose their leader.
Exactly.
That this offends God. And then I looked at it and I thought about it, and I looked in the books, I looked in the Torah, I looked in the Gospels, I looked in the narrations of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, I looked in the Quran, and I was like, wow, Mamadou, that's exactly what's being said. In the Quran, God says, I am the one who is making a caliph in the land, right? So God is the one who appoints the caliph, not Abu Bakr appointing Umar. This don't work. Abu Bakr is not God, right?
Yes.
In the Quran, it says, Inni ja'alun fil ardi khalifa. I am making in the earth a caliph. He's the one who blows in his spirit into Adam. And then he tells the angels to fall down in prostration. God appoints Adam. God appoints Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. God proclaimed Jesus as his vicegerent, right?
Yes.
At the scene of the baptism in the Bible of Jesus at the hand of John the Baptist, right? So you have this theme that is ongoing. Muhammad was the leader. He was the leader over all the Muslims. He was appointed by God. Jesus was appointed by God. He was supposed to be the ruler over the Jews and their Messiah. God's the one who appointed them. But the people, they rejected Jesus and they wanted to go with, their own choice, right? They didn't give victory to him. They allowed him to be arrested. And you know the rest of the story. You have the appointment of Moses by God. God's the one who appointed the successor of Moses. He appointed Joshua, son of Nun. God's the one who also appointed Aaron as a co-vicegerent with Moses during his lifetime. And he was also his successor. But then when he died, Joshua became his successor. And God's the one who appointed all of the prophets and the messengers. And those prophets and messengers were also rulers. Hence, David and Solomon were kings over the Israelites and not just prophets, right? So the prophet was meant to rule. Even in the holy books and scriptures, it says that we have not sent forward a messenger except that he should be obeyed, right? So it was very clear that this concept of the supremacy of God was very, very important. This concept of allegiances to God, that only God chooses the ruler, is at the core core of religion. In fact, it's religion in its entirety, and that's that's what happened. That's what was wrong with the nation, is that they chose people that were not appointed by God, and they obeyed them, and they had a bunch of scholars like this sheikh who was basically calling people to obey these false tyrants and these false rulers, right? So that's where the problem lied. And so Ahmed Hassan, proved himself to be the true successor of Imam Mahdi, and there was no reason to doubt him. All of his claims were going along with the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Everything that he said was going along with the divine books, the Torah, the Bible, the Quran. Like, there was no contradictions in his claims. Everything about him fit the narrations and the prophecies to a T. And so then I became a follower of Ahmed al-Hassan the Yamani. I'm still a follower of the Ahlul Bayt. I still believe in the 12 Imams. But the only difference between me now and the rest of the Shia is that me and a very small number of Shia around the earth recognize that the Yamani is truthful, and everybody else is saying no. Well, what are these other Shia following? I tried to see. I tried to make it make sense for me. It just wasn't making sense. They were saying crazy things. They were saying the same things now that the Sunnis are saying. Actually, they were saying stuff that was maybe even worse than that. They were saying that, your prayers are only accepted if you have a scholar that you imitate, right? So all the Shia now, like each Shia has to choose a scholar to do taqlid of, and so all the Shia are broken down into followers of different people. Some are followers of Khamenei, the Ayatollah of Iran. Others are followers of Sistani, who's in Iraq. Sistani is telling his followers that they have to participate in the elections during the American occupation of Iraq, and issuing fatwas, and weird things. And they're saying that, basically the scholar is the successor to the prophet. Right? Yes. And that the state of the scholars is the state of Imam al-Mahdi. And then they went as far as saying, some of them said that, that if Imam al-Mahdi came and tried to destabilize the government of Iran, it is the duty of Muslims to fight against Imam al-Mahdi, because the goal of Imam al-Mahdi is to establish a divine just state. Well, we already have a Muslim state, which is the government of Iran. So therefore, they kind of cancel out the need to even have now a divine just state, because apparently the scholars already fulfilled it. So what's the need for Imam al-Mahdi? So I realized that these people were evil. They're not teaching about the narrations where the Prophet Muhammad is warning about these filthy scholars. We're going to go through now a slideshow here. I want to show everybody all of the narrations one by one that, as you can see on the screen now, that are basically condemning the scholars of Islam.
Abu Dhar said, I was walking with the Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him and his family, one day, and he said, there is something I fear for my ummah more than the Dajjal. He said it 3 times. I said, O Messenger of Allah, what is it that you fear for your ummah more than the Dajjal? He said, misguiding scholars. Reported on the authority of the Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him and his family, he said, a time will come for my ummah during which nothing will remain from the Quran save its scripting, and nothing will remain from Islam save its name. They will be called Muslims, while they are as far as one can be from Islam. Their mosques will be filled with people, but they will be void of right guidance. The jurists of that time will be the most evil ever under the sky. They have sown disorder, and disorder they shall reap. When Imam al-Mahdi emerges, he will not have any apparent enemy, save for the jurists in particular. He and the sword will be inseparable, for if the sword were not in his hand, the jurist would issue fatwas ordering his death. However, Allah will bring him forth endowed with the sword, as well as with generosity, so they will obey, fear, and accept his rule without faith therein, while concealing the opposite. They have taken their rabbis and monks as lords apart from Allah. Imam al-Baqir, peace be upon him, interpreted the verse by saying, as for their rabbis and monks, verily they have obeyed them, and have taken their sayings, and they followed what they ordered them, and submitted to what they called them to. So they took them, the scholars, as lords by obeying them, leaving what Allah, His books, and messengers ordered. So they rejected it, the order, leaving it behind their backs, and followed what the rabbis and monks ordered them to. And they obeyed them, and disobeyed Allah. Verily, He mentioned this in our book, so that we may take heed from that. Abi Basir said, I asked Abu Abdullah, peace be upon him, about the words of Allah. They took their rabbis and monks as lords apart from Allah. He said, by Allah, they did not call them to worship themselves, and if they had called them to worship themselves, they would not have responded. But they made lawful for them what was forbidden, and forbade for them what was lawful, and so they worshipped them unknowingly.
Yeah, so you have now the scholars, they're not teaching about these narrations, and they're actually saying that we have to obey them, and that our prayers are not accepted except through them, and that they're the inheritors of the land, and they establish the divine just state, and there's no need for Imam Mahdi, and now they're teaching us that we have to actually fight against Imam Mahdi if he tries to destabilize the government of Iran. So I think it's very clear. It's clear, just like the Ahlul Bayt ﷺ said, our matter is clearer than the sun, and I stuck to basically Ahmed Hassan al-Yamani, whom proclaimed to be the Yamani, and I'm very comfortable with standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment and telling him the reasoning behind my beliefs. I believe in the prophethood of the Prophet Muhammad. I do not want to be associated with the murder of his family members, and so I have withdrawn myself from these companions and these people that told the Prophet to shut his mouth on the night of his passing, when he was trying to write a will for everybody to keep them from falling into misguidance. I declare myself innocent from that. Who am I holding on to? I'm holding on to Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, Ali ibn Abi Talib, Al-Hassan, Al-Hussein. I'm sorry, but these are the only people that I can trust their narrations, and the children of Imam al-Hussein, specifically the 9 imams after that. These are the only people that I can hold on to and believe in their narrations. And in their narrations, they told me about the Yamani, and a man came out and he showed me a letter of appointment. He showed me an apparent will, in which it's written in there that we have to follow this guy named Ahmad. You promised Prophet, in the narrations, you said that whoever holds on to this will never be led astray. So I trust that you can't make a mistake when you hold on to somebody who's claiming to be in the will, because that would negate the promise that the Prophet gave on his deathbed, that whoever holds on to it will never go astray. So I feel confident that if I just hold on to it, I won't be misguided. And holding on to the will of the Prophet led me to believe in the claim of Ahmed al-Hassan who presented a lot more proofs than other than just this, just the will, including the banner and demonstrating knowledge, that comes only from somebody who's truly connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's where my journey was. And with Ahmed al-Hassan, after finally speaking with Ahmed al-Hassan, alayhi salam, Ahmed al-Hassan, that I believed in, he shocked me. He shocked me to my core when he told me that I too was mentioned in the will of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that my name is there. My name is Abdullah in the will. And he told me to go forward and proclaim the will and to announce to the world, and call them towards the supremacy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to pave the way for the 12th Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam. And he brought to my attention the narration that stated, and before the Mahdi is an Egyptian and a Yemeni, and I'm the Egyptian and he's the Yemeni, and both of us have a banner that's written in it, Al-Bay'a Lillah, or allegiances to God. Everybody else on the planet, they're calling towards other systems and methods and other people, and this call is the only call that is calling towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, no, I didn't lead people astray. I actually led them towards Allah and His Messenger, and I'm calling towards them, and I'm calling towards the household of the Prophet Muhammad, and I'm calling towards the legitimate successors of the Prophet Muhammad, and I'm declaring myself innocent and trying to warn people that they have to declare themselves innocent too from the enemies of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's in terms of that. So that's my belief system. That's my history, and that's the reasoning why I went forward. Now he has a different opinion. His opinion is that we should not follow Abdullah Hashim. That it's just a cult. It's bad. That I'm a bad person, insincere. And that we should instead sit in the masjid in Birmingham and listen to him talk. I don't know why. Why would we listen to him? Look at him. I mean, who is he? On what authority does he speak? Is he a successor of the Prophet? Is he a grandchild of the Prophet? Is he somebody that the Prophet and his family mentioned that we are obliged to listen to? Is his opinion somehow special? Does he have secret knowledge? Like, what is it that why would I trust this? Why would I trust him or other than him? I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in placing myself in a position of slavery where I am being a worshiper of a scholar and placing this idol in between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Especially when the Prophet and his family have been abused so much and killed, and he's not even talking about it, and he's not even, condemning the killers of the babies and the liver eaters, and he's not condemning that household that usurped the caliphate, and he's not condemning all of the great crimes that were committed in the name of Islam by the Umayyads and the Abbasids and the Ottoman Empire and every other illegitimate Muslim ruler that came out of it. They destroyed the religion of Islam. They turned it from a religion of peace to a religion of terrorism. They paved the way and allowed for terrorists like Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and other people like this from ISIS and all these other, Taliban and all these things, Osama bin Laden. It's all because these people feel that they have a right to talk in the name of Islam and make decisions, and call towards jihad. But, as far as I go, I don't believe that. I don't believe that these people have the power to issue fatwas in religion. And that's what's upsetting them. They don't have the authority. It's haram, actually. They don't have the right to say this is halal or this is haram. It's not allowed. And it's not allowed for people to imitate these scholars. Everybody has to research and know the religion for their own selves. And they're only obliged to follow the household of the Prophet Muhammad, the specific people that are mentioned in the will of the Prophet Muhammad. Nobody else is allowed to speak in the name of religion except for them, right? And those who are calling towards them. And so, so naturally, Sheikh Asrar and other sheikhs will be offended by this. They want it to be an open, an open thing where they can each have their own followers and sit on a pulpit and pretend and write books in the name of religion and, show their theories and stuff and have cool covers where you have, I don't know. What did he say about his book? That it has he has subliminal messages on the cover of his book, is what he said. Subliminal messages. He's got an eye, but I don't know what, and he's interpreting the hadiths. And who cares? I'm not interested. Why would I go to the masjid to even debate with somebody whom I am so far away from coming to agreement with him on anything? If he came to agreement on the fundamentals, right? If he accepted Ali ibn Abi Talib and the successors of Ali ibn Abi Talib, and the debate was just about me and my claims, right? And Ahmed al-Hassan, that's fine. I would go out and debate him, but we're not even there. He's talking about something, and I'm talking about something totally different. Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam was murdered. People, all followers, all people of Islam, we have to recognize this. The daughter of the Prophet Muhammad was murdered. The door was slammed into her belly and her baby dropped. Her house was set on fire. This is the disrespect that was done to the household of the Prophet Muhammad. Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, the grandsons of the Prophet and the masters of the youth of paradise, were both martyred. One was poisoned in a conspiratorial assassination at the hands of Yazid and Muawiyah, and the other one was beheaded, and his family was massacred, and his 6-month-old child was killed, and the women were stripped of their hijab, and they were paraded through the streets of the Muslim lands. A great crime has been committed to the family of Muhammad. They murdered 8 more imams after Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. They poisoned them and they imprisoned them, and the Muslim nation is guilty for this. The Abbasid leaders and the Umayyad leaders are all guilty of it, and all of that falls on Abu Bakr and Umar. And yes, guys, the narrations of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, it mentions very specifically that Abu Bakr and Umar are in hellfire, in a coffin of fire, along with Pharaoh and Nimrod, and the worst of the worst, that they are horrible people. That the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam mentioned that the first person to pledge allegiance to Abu Bakr was Satan himself, right? And that Satan pushed these two, and these two went forward, and they caused Fatima to have the miscarriage by setting her house on fire, and that they're responsible for all of the sins that happened. The narrations also state that they were innovators. They're the first people that began to change in the religion of Islam. They took out mut'a marriage. They stopped that, made it haram. Even they know that they're changing the rulings of the Prophet Muhammad. In the time of the Prophet Muhammad, there's a marriage called mut'a. It's allowed. All scholars agree on that. It's a temporary marriage. And after the Prophet's death, Umar says, no, it's haram. We're not allowed to do this anymore. So who gave him the authority to decide? Who gave him the right to speak? And was he connected to God in some way, shape, or form? Was Gabriel coming down upon him? No. He changed also the adhan, right? This guy says that we have a new shahada, a new testimony. Yes, we have a new shahada. I testify that God is one. Muhammad is his messenger, and that Ali ibn Abi Talib and his successors, the imams from his sons, are the successors of the Prophet Muhammad. And I believe in the Mahdi and the Mahdis. I testify to that. What's wrong with that? That's what the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam told us that we have to believe in and testify to. So that's the thing. These non-working scholars, are a plague. They are the reason why Muslims are in the state that they are in. It started with Abu Bakr and Umar, and it's continued until this very present day. And the whole issue at hand is what? Is that there's people that are saying we have to follow those who are appointed by God in terms of our religion and our world, right? And there's people that want to just like, follow anybody that jumps on the pulpit or whoever manages to kill the family of the Prophet. So I'm sticking with the family of the Prophet. He's clearly sticking with other things. I'm not interested in his lies. It's natural that he lies about me. I don't even want to get into, this type of debate unless we first talk about and the family of the Prophet Muhammad and the great crimes that have occurred to them. Thank you so much for joining me, Mamadou.
Thank you so much for that.
God bless you, bro.
God bless you too.